Hello, everyone, and welcome to Now and Zen. Today's guest is Amelia Huff, also known as Zhea Erose. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Yes. Awesome. And she is just this incredible musician who writes a lot of really great music in 31 tone, just intonation, and even combinations of them. So we are so glad to have her here today. Welcome, Amelia. How are you?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm doing very good today. I've been writing music and I've been teaching and stuff. And so now I'm just relaxing. We're going to talk about music. So that's always fun. Yeah.
Sweet. Yes, that's always a good time. I was just listening to your song that uses novemdecimal tuning. I think that's how you say that.
Novemdecimal? Novemdecimal 12, yes.
Yes. How did you come up with this tuning, and what do you enjoy so much about it?
Oh, that's a good question. So I am very fascinated with the Harmonic Series. That's quite a big question, really, because it depends on how fundamental you want to go, you know? I suppose if we go all the way to the fundamental roots, how did I come up with that tuning, or why did I go to it? Because I worship the Harmonic Series, and I'm just trying to most deeply express, you know what I mean? So it's,
yeah.
So it depends, but if we're talking more on a functional, compositional level, so my approach to just intonation, I mostly deal with harmonic series chunks, and then I like to sort of find different structures inside of them, or sort of basically take a generalized like macro harmony and then render it through different segments of the harmonic series. I found over time that if you use composite numbers, you don't get very unique intervals. You get much lower complexity intervals, which are good in some cases. But I find that if you use the lower complexity intervals, which are mostly sought after, you know, in the majority of just intonation that I hear, you actually get too overwhelming of a sound and too much infinite perfection. I think it's best used as dosage regulation, where you save the low complexity just intonation for moments where you want it. So, like if you're thinking of a spectrum of consonance to dissonance or concordance to discordance, those low complexity things represent clarity, like clearness to the overall pressure structure, you know? The novemdecimal tuning is basically just the diatonic 12-note scale being roughly mapped to 19 as a prime, like linear segment.
So like if you were going up in the harmonic series and you decided that your first note was on 19, it's like you're kind of approximating 19 through 38, but you're maybe skipping a few notes here and there that don't line up with 12 tone equal temperament,
yes.
like the ones at the end, or?
Correct. Well, I mean, it's there's several ways you can consider it. So first off, I consider the lower the complexity of the paired factors that make the segment you're on, the more unique it's going to be. So for instance, if you start on 19, from 19 to 38, it's completely unique intervals. There are no reducible intervals at all. That is its own family. Just like, just like, for instance, 3 to 6 is its own family. And then all the things above that draw in 3 to 6 as a factor of their denominator, then those intervals are present. So like if we want a perfect fourth, for instance, if I want to put a perfect fourth alongside of the novemdecimal intervals, which are based on that 19 to 38 segment, I could just do 19 times 3. And then now I will get some novemdecimal intervals, and some perfect fourth. So it's cool. I feel the way that people have viewed just intonation, basically people only really think about just intonation as over 1 or over 2, and that's totally great, and that's its own thing. But if we then contextualize it within that lens of looking at it as all prime factoring, you know, the 1 to 2 is like the fundamental. You can't really, you know, I'm not going to separate with that. People can say, you know, I'll keep the octave in my music for sure. I like imperfect octaves quite a lot. They're much better at continuing a sonority. Like I find that sometimes if you have like a self-closing, like for instance, minor 13s are kind of self-closing if you think about them in the way that they end up looping around. And so if you have like a comma octave, you can just like restart the whole structure, shift it down a comma, and you get like a compressing air feeling, which is cool. But
for minor 13s closing, so what you mean by that is that like you mean a 13th like a diatonic interval, so like something that overshoots an octave a bit.
Yeah, I mean that if you do a tertian construction where you just start stacking opposing minor major thirds, you end up automatically self-closing. So if you go minor, then major, then minor, then major, then minor, then major, then minor, you're back at the octave where you started. So that structure in thirds inherently self-closes unless you can stop it from closing somewhere along the way. Which is actually why, at least in my opinion, one of the reasons why Lydian structures can be so easily hyperextended, whereas minor structures are much less hyperextendable unless you're working in fourths, and then you start, stacking up the chordal stuff or whatever to evoke out the Locrian colors, or even darker than that. So, yeah, that's why minors are weird to extend sometimes.
With your talk of how Lydian and minor extend in the opposite directions, it kind of reminds me of how, Jacob Collier has popularized the idea of negative harmony. Is that something that you use in your music a lot for chord construction, or, flipping chords over an axis, or?
Okay, so I kind of, that's an interesting question. Yes and no. I mean, I've, of course, explored different perspectives like that, and I mean, I've written pieces that are mirrored across an axis in terms of pitch. I've done compositional approaches and exercises like that throughout my life. In my actual thinking, mirroring is a big impact in terms of the way that I write bass lines, but it's not so much like, hey, I've got this chord progression and now I'm just going to invert one of the sections. It's more so everything proportionally has an opposite, so it just makes sense in terms of balance too. And, if you're thinking about melodies, Lydian is the most melodic, or I should say, the cleanest upper structure, right? In terms of if you're working in the 7-note diatonic kind of set, it's the cleanest upper structure. Whereas Locrian's considered the darkest. But if you actually play Locrian bass lines over a fixed center point, you actually get the cleanest bass lines. So if you're thinking immediately moving out from a center point, Lydian's the cleanest upwards, but Locrian's actually the cleanest downwards because it inverts into Lydian. So I think of it that way when I'm thinking about bass lines. Oftentimes, dirty, you would expect a bass line that would be dirty with the certain intervals that it has, but it's actually very concordant because it sort of working immediately from a center point. Not always though, but it can. Jacob Collier, you brought him up. I respect his work a lot. I think he's a great artist. I was into the music theory stuff long before he got out of his teens, though. So, I've been doing my thing for a while, but he's definitely a great artist.
I hope that people who find him look up microtonal music, and certainly they'll find you and all of the awesome piano and choir stuff that you do. Well, I hope they do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That would be cool. I'm just going to continue to create my art always. I really don't think so much about the consumption of it, but it's great if people want to listen to it. That's cool.
That's a really healthy way to approach it. And you're not doing it for really overly intellectual reasons, although you're very you get that and you work with that.
For sure. I mean, for me, the most important thing is to hear and to experience, I think that theory is pretty pointless and vapid if you're not hearing. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I love some generative, process-oriented, formalist stuff. That's great, but it's just for my own personal solo expression. When I'm making music for Zhea Erose, my moniker, that music is where I'm... it's self-indulgence. That's what it's purely about, making the thing that I genuinely want to hear. And all the music that I make in that project is pretty much my favorite music. I mean, I wouldn't choose that if I could only listen to one thing, because I've got some other stuff that I like other artists, but it's definitely my favorite music, and I do that very intentionally because I spent all this time trying to figure out how music works so that I could make the coolest sounding stuff for myself, and whatever that ends up being is what it is.
And your dedication really shows. I think there was that one song, was it Sola, where you said you did over 1,500 takes?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here in front of my computer every now and then playing some video games, tabbing out, doing a couple hundred vocal takes, and then getting back to work. And, I on lunch break do a few vocal... It was over the course of about a week or so. I know my roommates, they were certainly hating it. Not that they don't like my music, but I was just, for that whole week, I even told them, I was I am on this inspiration and I have to finish this. I finished the whole piece in less than 8 days, basically. From start the very first note to the very final export. It was about 8 days. And that was because literally day in, day out, I would do my day job, and then I would just get off work, and then I would just pour, and then I'd stay up to like 4 or 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, then go to sleep, do my day job, and then just continue.
How early did you have to get up for that? Like, how much sleep were you getting?
Oh, I make sure I don't teach before 11 a.m. So I still get 5 or 6 hours every now and then, still most of the time.
Right, yeah, that's a good move. Wow. Yeah, I love it when you just get inspired and you just have, like, a stream of, like, productivity. Like, I want that to happen to me again.
I'm on that right now with my other piece I've been working on, Sonder. The original working title was Undecahedral, but I think I'll go with Sonder, just for the memes.
So,
yeah.
Is this song 23 minutes long?
24. Yeah, it is. It'll probably be exactly 24 minutes. So.
And by the way, you might have to help me out, because I don't know how that title is a meme.
Oh.
I don't know what the kids are into.
Oh, Sonder? It's not really a meme. Sorry, I just used that word to talk about, like, just for the sake of it, Sonder is Sonder is kind of a made up word that was made up in like 2012 by this guy who's trying to make the Dictionary of Sorrows, which is like words that should exist that don't actually exist. Sonder is that feeling. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Sonder is that feeling that you experience when you realize that every single individual in the world is living their own individual life experience just as equally complex and unfathomable as your own. That overwhelming sense of just like everything simultaneously, but also disconnection. That's Sonder.
I love that feeling. Yeah, I've seen that actually online.
Yeah, that's why I said for the memes, like.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That topic is always like fascinating to me, like words that people don't use. Like the other day I just looked up like least used words in English, and like one of them was like stibnite. It was just like this rock.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, this one's a little different because it's not a word that people don't use. It's a word that was created intentionally, right? But the usage of a word depends on how it's sort of employed and how it's acquired by the population. So perhaps by maybe my song Sonder, that will be a step forward in anchoring that word as a real word. Who knows?
Yes.
Lexical progression. I love that. But no, but yeah, that piece is... I'm pretty much done with it. Actually, last night I was recording vocals for several hours, and I kind of got to a point where I was like, does it even need any more? I don't really think, I had an idea to do like a lot of vocals like I did with Sola, and I have done a lot of vocals for it so far, but I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like, the 24-minute instrumental by itself speaks for itself, and I feel like I need to use the voice very sparingly and just to create support for the piece, and so... just making sure, then I think I'll pretty much be done with it.
Yeah.
I was thinking that would be the end to my microtonal LP, my first microtonal LP. Right now it's about 55 minutes. There's about an hour and 6 minutes. But there's actually, I think I need to cut Divinate, the 31-tone piece that I've released. I think I need to cut it.
The one with the ring visual.
The chorale, yeah. I think I need to cut that from the album. And that means... I think I need to create one more piece after the piece I'm making right now, and that will make me feel like my album is balanced, because I feel like Divinate was made more of a headspace of this, less of a serious kind of thing, and I just feel like it's kind of a different tone than the rest of the album in terms of sound production quality, because like the new piece I made, Sola, Prayer Room, they're just like super high quality sounds, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about your production techniques, actually, since they're so high quality. Like, what synths are you using, and, what's your mixing technique? You sit down, you're about to make something. What happens?
That's a great question. So first off, in terms of mixing, I already told you, once again, it depends on how fundamental you want to go. And I worship the Harmonic Series. So my entire mixes are mixed around the Harmonic Series pattern. So I spectrally distribute energy across my entire sound spectrum of a mix in accordance to a fundamental harmonic pattern. So
oh wow, so you're looking at a frequency analyzer like the whole time, then, is that?
My ears are a frequency analyzer. I don't need to...
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? I don't need to look at it to get it. Sometimes I might, In fact, if you look at Sola, or you look at the piece I'm working on right now in a EQ or a spectrogram, you will see that it basically follows a harmonic pattern with a spectral roll-off of an ideal aesthetic human voice. So basically, my mixes have the same spectral roll-off profile as like a human voice that would be deemed, aesthetically beautiful. beautiful. So basically it creates this whole profile to the overall thing that you're experiencing that has a curve that makes it feel like comfortable but full and active and present, just like voice.
Yes. What are the properties of an aesthetically beautiful human voice, for those of us who don't know?
Yes. Now, of course, when I say aesthetically beautiful human voice, I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek. I mean, one, for my own personal taste, because that's what fundamentally matters about styles that I create. But second, basically, if I were to show a certain sound to 50 people and ask them to rank voices based on desirability or attractability or beauty or aesthetics alone, we would see that there are certain trends. One of the common trends to that is a false-fold retracted, sort of thinner quality to the sound. And sometimes thyroid tilt as well. But essentially what that does is it causes the spectral profile to change. So if you think about a harmonic series, think about a theoretically perfect harmonic series like an additive synthesizer, okay?
And their volumes are decreasing in kind of a sawtoothy way, or...
Their volumes are decreasing, not sawtoothy. Their volumes decrease in a rather sloping way. But the shape of that slope is what we call the spectral roll-off or the spectral tilt. Okay, and that's dependent upon a few vocal physiology factors and behavioral factors. But basically, what happens is the more the negative growth of those harmonics rolls off. So the quieter the harmonics get as you go up, that would be a steeper spectral roll-off, right? That would be a thinner, lighter, and purer sound quality for the voice. And then the flatter that becomes, the more we get those like buzzier harmonics into the voice, right?
Yeah.
Versus something that's more like that, which is like a lot thinner and purer, right? So that's like the different qualities of spectral tilt. So I like to mix in a way where my entire mix as a whole, first off, is basically mirroring a harmonic series, and then second off is mixed in accordance to the sort of way that we hear human voices.
There's so much to think about with that spectral profile.
For sure.
And like how your vowels can potentially change to sort of make that work. I actually have a choral piece that I'm working on that's in 31 that the idea is that, you know how like in a choir piece, like lots of times you like get to a climax, like those pieces you had in high school. I don't know if you sang any of those. Yeah, exactly. You get there and it's a big moment. Like I want to get there by being very careful with my lyric selection and vowels, so that all of like the darker vowels are at the beginning, and then all this stuff is happening right there.
Absolutely,
just like so much ring.
I love that. I mean, when I'm making my music, vowel choice, my lyrics, I want you to not understand what I'm saying or why I'm saying it. I know why I'm saying it and what I'm saying, but I want people not to understand it, because so much of it for me is all of the vocal parts in my music are improvised. I mean, sometimes I write, I sit down and I'll really grid on a certain part, but I really want my voice parts to be improvised, because part of it is capturing like the feedback of the music in the word choice, in the phrase. I have a general idea and I want to see how that gets filtered through this sort of aleatoric expression of myself in real time, and so vowel choice though to me is so crucial. In fact, it's one of the most important things. Every single time I go to open my mouth when I'm singing in my music, I have to know what the quality of the vowel is going to be. And that really is a timbral choice. That changing the vowel is equivalent to choosing a clarinet over choosing, some equally registered instrument that has a different timbral profile. It's the exact same thing, because basically our timbral profiles vocally are controlled by our glottal behavior and controlled by our vocal tract. And the vocal tract changes the EQ, which is basically the difference between timbral qualities of instruments. So, but yeah, in terms of mixing though, on the harmonic series topic, mixing like the harmonic series, this is the most fundamentally important thing about mixing, because the goal, essentially, the difference between a clean and dirty mix is how stable the speaker cone that the thing is playing back on is able to vibrate, right? And the less sinusoidal, or I should say the less harmonically spaced your music is, the less sinusoidal the overall motion of the speaker cone is going to be, which means that you're going to get a muddier signal and you're going to get more of a lossy quality. So it's really about it's really about trying to manipulate the structure of the physical playback device via mixing it in a way that's near accordance with the harmonic series to create the purest and cleanest vibration of the physical object.
Right. Because the harmonic series doesn't just describe how things theoretically vibrate as single notes. It has to do with how like potentially anything could be resonating.
Resonating is one word for it. Let's try. I would say try not to take it too close to the word resonance, though, because the word resonance often gets misascribed to harmonic series propagation. But yeah. So I mean, the harmonic series is. Well, it's a lot of things, but essentially it's a fundamental behavior of our universe where if you have a fluid field or you have a field of some sort, and then you have some object that interacts with that field, and then that object oscillates at some rate, what you'll end up finding is that the fluid subdivides itself in multiple places. Because if I have a physical object vibrating here in the corner of my screen, right, and then it's over here vibrating, and then it would be impossible physically to make this little piece of air vibrate instantaneously the moment the motion starts. Therefore, sine waves can never exist in the universe, because a sine wave of air pressure would mean the entire local space is perfectly following the motion of the object, and the only way for that to happen is to somehow break temporality and distance traveling, you know? So what that means is that if an object vibrates here, bumps into this air molecule, bumps into this one, that first molecule turns around, and that's actually an ultra high frequency harmonic that we'll never be able to measure, you know? That is so beyond our measurement capabilities, but it's the overall reaction and actions of those creating sort of equilibrium and stability points in the overall field that end up generating harmonics. They're a natural way that energy distributes itself in a field, assuming the object is persistent.
Yeah.
So, but we don't want to confuse it with resonance.
Have you been interested in the physics of sound for a while, or like how do you study that? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I'm incredibly super duper into the physics of sound. How do you study it? Well, I'll just tell you this, I haven't had much formal training, but I would say that I work with a lot of people who have had formal training in the topic, and they don't know very much either. So it's kind of let me explain.
Hey, I know you would like to hear the rest of Amelia's explanation. Unfortunately, we've run out of storage for this month on this episode right now, but if you want to hear the rest of our conversation, it is amazing, and it is over on the Patreon account, so I've left a link in the description. Now, Amelia is going to tell us about all of her upcoming projects, which you should definitely, absolutely, 100% follow.
Yes, I'll be releasing my 5th LP, and it will be a full microtonal album. It's actually a concept album. It's about a witch who turns herself into sound and can't find her way back. So it's a concept album, and it's going to feature lots of different tunings and mostly just intonation towards certain parts of it. And I'm working on a just intonation music theory treatise, so be on the lookout for that. Hopefully I'll finish it by the end of this year. And then, of course, always releasing music, Zhea Erose Music, Bandcamp.com. I've got the YouTube, I've got like the Patreon stuff. You can find that in the YouTube comments. Do your own, find your way. But anyways, thanks so much for the opportunity to chat. I'm really floored with the support that I've received, both in the music worlds and the voice worlds. I'm just very thankful to be able to do this stuff all the time. And, so thanks everybody. It's really cool that people like my music. I've been making music for a really long time and no one seemed to care until I found the microtonal world, and that's been quite nice. So thanks for everything.
This episode is made possible by the generosity of our patrons, our Zen Harmonic patrons, as well as our Zen Harmonic gods, Matthew Sheeran, Vincenzo Sicarella, Kit Duguay, Hector McGuffin, Christopher Bailey, Leland O. Weigel, Amy Coleman, Jill Weigel, Tina Harmon Carteau, and the Brass Whisperer. Remember, I am not going to be doing the podcast if I do not have 60 patrons by December 2020. So just a reminder. And when I get 30 patrons, I'll make another Easley Blackwood Etude arrangement.